So the DNC just started a couple of hours ago as we go live here on Monday night. They gavelled in. They immediately did the Rules Committee. They brought in Barney Frank, and boom, the booze started immediately. So that was he was the first person. Congratulations, Barney Frank. First person to get booed right out of the gate at the convention. And so why is he being booed? Because the Bernie Sanders people know that Barney Frank has not been particularly kind to them, and they have long memories. So they're booing right off the bat. But remember, the Rules Committee, actually the Bernie Sanders people fought for and got something great, which was they were fighting to reduce all the, not reduce, to get rid of all the superdelegates. They had lost before the convention. But once they got here, they got another concession, which was to cut the superdelegates to a third of what they used to be. So that's a giant concession. So the Bernie Sanders people are actually very happy about that. And when that was announced later, there was raucous applause. But wait, we're just getting started. You might have heard about how Debbie Wasserman Schultz was booed earlier in the day when she was with the Florida delegates. Some of the Bernie Sanders people had booed her. But then Barney Sanders gets booed. But we're not even getting close to the action yet. Then we have another speaker up. Congresswoman Fudge comes up from Ohio. Yes, that's her name. Okay. And the first time she says, and we're going to get Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine elected president and vice president. Boo! And you're like, what? You just mentioned the nominee, and you've got all these people booing. And then applause came in, because it was the Bernie Sanders people booing, and then the Hillary Clinton people came in and tried to drown out their boos with applause. That only happened about 18 extra times. And it went back and forth, back and forth. Then there was a Bernie chant. And then there was a super awkward Hillary chant, which I haven't heard before, I think for good reason. And then I talked to Nina Turner, who is one of the top surrogates for Bernie Sanders. On the floor, we were covering it live. You should check out all of our live coverage all week, youtube.com/TYT. And as I'm there, she's walking by, I talked to her, and I said, are they going to boo the name Hillary Clinton for 4 straight days at her convention? And she said, maybe. Oh, wow. Okay, then the next question, the one that I asked, and then as I was leaving, a mainstream reporter who was off the record, so I don't want to say who it is, asked me, because thinking that I am the representative of Sanders, right? What is it going to take for them to stop booing? And that's a great question. So Nina Turner's answer was, hey, listen, at least some sort of public acknowledgement that the leaks that we saw and the emails we saw because of the WikiLeaks from the DNC, where they clearly seem to be biased against Bernie Sanders, a giant public apology. That was Nina Turner's answer. She doesn't speak for Bernie Sanders, but she's a close surrogate. I happen to think that won't do it. I'm not sure anything will do it. That was my answer. You know why? There is a fundamental disagreement. The Sanders people do not want corporations, donors, and lobbyists controlling their party. And in my opinion, the Hillary Clinton people do want that. Now, here's what I mean by that. It's not like, oh, they love the money in politics and the corruption and they're bad people and they're evil. No. This isn't personal. It's that they think, and this person in the mainstream press who supports Hillary Clinton also said, well, what are we supposed to do? Not take the money? And I was thinking, yeah, that's kind of what they want. Now, you might think that's unrealistic. Certainly the Democratic Party thinks that's unrealistic. So they do not agree. The Democratic Party thinks you're crazy if you're in that camp. We're going to take that money so we can win. And the Sanders people say, as long as you take that money, I think you're corrupt, and I can't applaud you. So, guys, I think we've got significant drama and dissension at this convention.
Yeah, it's knife to a gunfight stuff also, and what you're talking about. The Bernie people want them to get rid of the money. The Democrats are saying, why would we get rid of the money? Now, let's change the rules, and they have said that. Bernie Sanders has had an effect. His revolution has had an effect on this party, on this convention, and on this candidate. You know, we've talked about this before. How many times have the four of us sat around and watched, some Senate candidate lose a race in Arkansas and say, we made a difference here, and we roll our eyes and say, you made no difference. You made no difference. Bernie Sanders has made more of a difference as a losing candidate in a race than any candidate in the history of our lives anyway. I mean, I can't speak for the 1800s completely. Some of the 1800s I can. But the truth of the matter is they got everything they wanted, and that's the frustration that you said, what can they do? Probably nothing. Nina Turner says, apologize. I couldn't agree with you more. Apologize for the WikiLeaks, acknowledge it. That would make zero difference. These people are going to stand there, they're going to boo. And I think that it is, I see a frustration in Bernie Sanders. This afternoon, he sent a letter to supporters saying, do not boo, do not turn your back, do not walk away. That's not the way we're going to win. That's not the way we're going to get what we want. It's not. He's right, and they're now not listening to him.
They're not listening to him. So let me be clear about those two things. So earlier in the day, I went to cover the Bernie Sanders delegates had a meeting, and Bernie Sanders spoke at that meeting. And so the first half of the speech was all about the revolution. They were not just applauding, they were joyous. So it's not like there's only anger in the Bernie Sanders delegates, not at all. They're excited about the revolution. And there was a buzz in that room. There was energy. Every time somebody came up to speak. In the beginning, Killer Mike speak. He lit up the room. Everybody's having fun. But when Bernie Sanders switched the topic to Hillary Clinton, boom, boos. No matter what he said, and he would do this, they'd be like, nope, boo. And then they started to chant organically that I haven't heard before. We want Bernie. We want Bernie. And he was like trying to make sure they don't keep going. They were like, no, we're going to keep going. They won't listen to him. And so, look, you're asking me, is there anything Hillary Clinton can do? And I actually think there is one thing, and I don't know that she'd be willing to do it. To come out and give a speech where she says, you're right. We keep taking all this money, and I'm tired of it. And there's so many things that are promised back and forth. And look, we try super hard to hear donors out. We got to hear them out. That's the way the system is, but not to follow their commands. I'm afraid that that's exactly what the Republican Party does. But still, even if you trust me and you have faith in me, and I thank you so much for having faith in me, this is a system that can't work. I'm going to have to take the money this time because we cannot risk having Donald Trump as president. But I promise to you that it'll be my first priority, my top priority. Whatever I do, by the time I leave office, the first 4 years, I will get money out of politics. If I don't do it, I'll be a failure.
Jen, she already said it. She already said
no, she didn't say it that way.
She didn't say it that way. She said constitutional amendment. That's saying it. I mean,
no,
she
it's
said
not.
Citizens United specifically,
No.
which would
Right,
be
yeah.
something, but that's just the latest abuse.
But Cenk, it goes further than
something.
that. I
it
don't
is.
even think that would work. And part of the
I
problem
agree.
is, Never Hillary Bernie supporters don't believe her. You talked about all the different ways that Bernie, pushed her to the left, and he did push her to the left. And, her rhetoric has changed when it comes to things like minimum wage. It's changed when it comes to free college education. It's changed when it comes to government corruption and money in politics. But Sanders supporters are not happy with her because they don't believe her. And they have, to some extent, good reason to. I mean, think about it. Debbie Wasserman Schultz steps down as the party chair. And then at the same time, Hillary Clinton announces her as the honorary chair. So
she literally honors her.
Yeah, and that, of course, is going to rub some Bernie Sanders supporters the wrong way. And then also they're not happy with the VP pick of Kane, and I understand that as well. So, look, Cenk, they're not going to believe her. She can stand on that podium and she can say exactly that. They're not going to believe her.
No, I hear you guys. Go ahead, John.
I think that, look, I would love for her to make that pledge. I agree that with what Michael said before, is it seems difficult to unilaterally disarm on money in politics before you actually get rid of it. But, I mean, we had Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders showed that you can raise money from regular people. And I fully believe that he could have gone into the general election and largely done that same thing. But she could change a couple of her core positions. And I don't know, if she assured us that we're not going to pass TPP in its current form. I'm changing my position on fracking. I accept that it's terrible for the environment. It's terrible for the climate. We don't need it going forward. There are other ways that we can power our country. A couple of these core positions, in addition to what Anna was saying about not needlessly spitting in the face, like Debbie Wasserman Schultz, for better or worse, represents the rigging of the primaries. To hug her to you less than 24 hours after she's been disgraced is just terrible. When you're asked, have you been moved to the left? Say, you know what, I was always a strong progressive, but Bernie Sanders opened my eyes to a couple of positions I hadn't thought about enough. That is the perfect compromise position, and it doesn't insult millions of Sanders supporters who feel like you're going out of your way to say that Bernie Sanders didn't matter. And I think that if you combine the positions with a couple of these symbolic moves, I think that would win over a lot of people.
Okay, luckily, once again, I have the answer. So
No, I already had it. It's cool.
All right,
so
so-
next up,
Better be better than John's.
Right. So first off, of course, you guys are all right about the fundamental nature of the party, and this is what I was talking about. That okay, they get rid of Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and then the party goes, "What else do you want?" In fact, again, that mainstream reporter that I was talking to said they got rid of Debbie Wasserman Schultz. What else are they supposed to do? But then you replace her with Donna Brazile, who Donna Brazile is very nice to me. And she's very amiable and really hard to dislike. That's why I keep telling you with all these people, it is not personal. It has nothing to do with animus. But Donna Brazile is also very much a quote-unquote centrist, which is from the corporate wing of the party. She was also in the WikiLeaks saying, this Bernie Sanders stuff is stupid, right? That they continue to persist. So that's not real change. See, they keep thinking they're going to fool Bernie Sanders supporters with cosmetic change. Wakey, that's not going to happen. That's why I say, look, Michael, the amendment, she proposes an amendment. Now, she says, I'm going to do it in the first 30 days. I'm glad. I don't want to put that down at all because I love that she's doing that.
And she wouldn't have done that had not Bernie Sanders run for
That's
president.
right.
although she will never admit that.
But
It doesn't matter if she admits it.
But what's most
Not
important
to me.
is she going to do anything about it, right? So is she going to push it? Because the Democrats in the Senate, if you don't know this, have proposed a lot of amendments. Right. They're like, oh yes, I propose an amendment. Send me $20, $100, because I'm looking out for you, right? And some of them are super genuine, and some of them are like Chuck Schumer, who's looking to ironically raise money out of it. So the question is, which side is she on? Is she genuine or not? Anna's absolutely right. For very good reasons, the Sanders people don't believe her because in the past, she's not been genuine. That's why I'm saying you can do one of two things. One is the phrasing that I gave before, which is, this is my top priority, and if I do not succeed at this, I will be a failure. Now, the reason I say it that way is because there is one thing politicians do actually care about, their legacy. They are obsessed with it, obsessed. So if she says, if I don't do this, I'm a failure, boom, she's pinned to it. That's real. That's real. She will care a lot about that. Because then every reporter will turn around and you said, oh, you said you'd be a failure. You didn't do it. You're a failure. She won't say it, though.
Every acquiescence, there's another demand. So that the whole idea that the Clinton campaign has to, again, say something and then say it in a perfect way, say it in a way that perfectly appeases a certain segment of the Sanders audience, of the Democratic audience here. Listen, you have a lot of Sanders people here that are very passionate. The Democrats have an advantage, Hillary Clinton has a disadvantage, and that there are so many more delegates that the Democrats have than the Republicans do. So it seems like a raucous convention, more raucous even than the one in Cleveland by a lot, because there are that many more people. There are that many more Sanders people, that many more people that want to disrupt. The frustration is that no matter what, then there's oh, but you have to do it this way. Oh, but you have to do it this way. You have to do it this way.
I know,
it's time.
because
That's the way they're looking at it.
No, I know, Michael. That's because all they're doing is offering fig leaves. And
that's all they have to offer.
That's all they have to offer because they are corporatists.
But no, it's not because they are corporatists. It's because they won. And that's all they have to offer. They have given in on a lot of things. They're not going to give up a whole lot more. They gave up more today in those super delegates. Good for them for doing that. That was a great idea. They should have gotten rid of all of them. But the point
Michael,
is,
you're absolutely right. Now, if you're looking at a standard election, the guy who won is the one who gets to set the rules,
or the woman.
And obviously in this case. So, as a matter of fairness, I get it. I get the Hillary Clinton position. Wait a minute, who won this primary? I won this primary, right?
Yeah.
But that's not the point at this point. The point is who's going to win the general election. And the Sanders people are saying, yeah, okay, but if I don't believe you and I don't think you're going to do anything about it, I'm not going to vote for you. So in that case, if you want to win the general election, it's not a matter of concessions to make people feel better. It's a matter of concessions so they go out and vote for you.
Also,
that's
I
a
think
great. Go ahead, John.
there would probably be less, there would still be a lot of pissed off people at the convention, but there would be fewer if you didn't have the added contextual factors of the recent revelations about her server, or that there's not going to be an indictment, but that there was a lot of condemnation, which appears to have influenced the polls, which sent her down. And then you have Trump coming off of his convention with a big boost in support. And all of that in the context of Sanders, who polls better against Trump. When you have the guy who was to the left of the candidate did very well in the Democratic primaries and appears like he would be a much stronger candidate against an extremely scary candidate like Donald Trump, then that makes a lot of people, I think, less willing to simply say, okay, you guys won it this time, we'll be back in 4 or 8 years. The stakes seem so much higher because of the Trump factor.
And I also think, sorry to interrupt you, I just wanted to make one more point. I also think it's important for her to stay consistent with, what she's trying to put out there for progressives, right? So, yes, I love the rhetoric on all the issues that I outlined earlier, but then it's inconsistencies with, naming Debbie Wasserman Schultz as the honorary chair and choosing someone who's clearly not a progressive as your VP pick. It's
I disagree with that about Tim Kaine. I think he's a real liberal, and I not on every single issue.
I think he's liberal on a lot of important issues. He was a leader
but I wouldn't
in
say
civil
clearly
rights.
not a progressive. I think that
he's not a progressive when it comes to a lot of issues, including TPP, which a lot of Bernie supporters are very passionate about. So I could understand the frustration that they feel. And to be honest with you, when she made that pick, my interpretation of that was, okay, well, she's already decided that she's not going to be able to get the Bernie camp on her side. So now she's going to try to reach out to the more moderate Republicans that don't like Trump. And that's not going to bode well with Bernie supporters. So, look, that's just my interpretation. I could be wrong.
And it's a losing strategy. That will not work. So, look, last thing is, she could throw a bomb, which it's not in her nature. I would be shocked to my core if she did it. If she did this, she would win, but you'll never get her to believe it. If she said, as soon as the convention is over, I am not taking any more donor money. I'm going to go the Bernie Sanders route, and I'm going to take it $27 at a time. You know what would happen? Boom. All of a sudden, the whole Democratic Party, if she said that at her speech, the place would light up. She would gain immediate trust. She would get a ton of money, and it would work.
I knew if we sat here long enough, I'd agree with you on something. That's actually a good idea.
I had never thought about that. I wish that she had done that when he challenged her in the primaries, but that would be very interesting. It would not get rid of all of my concerns about her, but that's not symbolic. It's not a fig leaf. That's a fig Newton right there.
And she would be booed for it.
No,
Yeah, I'll
she
boo her,
wouldn't.
but-
No. You know what would happen?
No.
That place would light up, and the Sanders supporters
No,
would go,
I know.
yes, finally.
Or they'd
Okay.
say, I don't believe her.
Well, that's
Well,
not
that's
a thing
easier
you
to
can
verify.
fake.
Yeah.
You'd know by the next
Yeah.
day.